What if the warm, available, emotionally consistent partner isn't the one who feels wrong to you? What if he's just unfamiliar? There's a specific, uncomfortable reason. Emotional distance can feel more like love than closeness does, and it has almost nothing to do with the person standing in front of you. It has to do with a blueprint your body built years before you ever met him. If you've ever felt an inexplicable pull towards someone who's clearly not fully available, while someone genuinely warm and present left you feeling strangely flat, you are not self-sabotaging on purpose. You're describing one of the most well-documented patterns in attachment psychology, and it's far more common than most people admit out loud. Here's what almost nobody explains clearly. Attraction isn't just about chemistry between two people in the present moment. It's also about pattern matching against a template your nervous system built in early childhood, long before you had any say in the matter. That template doesn't ask whether a dynamic is healthy. It only asks whether the dynamic is familiar. And for many women, emotional unavailability isn't a red flag their body recognizes as dangerous. It's a frequency their body recognizes as home. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your nervous system might be wired to find emotional distance more compelling than emotional presence. Why genuine warmth can paradoxically feel boring or even slightly suspicious. And what it actually takes to teach your body a new definition of what love is supposed to feel like. Because the pull you've been calling chemistry might actually be your oldest wound, quietly running the show. Picture this. Two men. One texts consistently, plans dates, shows real interest in her day, asks thoughtful follow-up questions. The other is harder to read, slower to respond, emotionally guarded, occasionally warm in a way that feels almost accidental, like he didn't quite mean to let it slip through. She finds herself thinking about the second one constantly, while the first one, despite doing everything right, simply doesn't hold her attention the same way. This is where it gets uncomfortable. That's not a coincidence. And it's not because the available man is somehow less interesting as a person. Attachment researchers describe something called the internal working model, a kind of relational blueprint built from your earliest bonds that operates largely outside conscious awareness and quietly filters every future partner through the lens of what already feels recognizable. If your early caregiving included real warmth but also real inconsistency, present some days, distracted or distant on others, affection that arrived unpredictably rather than reliably, your nervous system didn't tape-ins. File that away as a flaw in the relationship. It filed it away as the actual definition of what love is. So when an emotionally unavailable adult partner shows up decades later, your body doesn't read him as a risk. It reads him as familiar, and familiar to a nervous system operating on implicit memory rather than logic. It's mistaken for safe far more often than anyone would like to admit. That's only half the story, because there's a second mechanism working alongside the familiarity, and it's almost cruelly efficient. The same intermittent reinforcement that makes slot machines so compelling is quietly at work. Here too, a partner who's warm only occasionally creates a much stronger emotional pull than one who's a routstaver, ear tough, or you're gaply, because the brain's reward system fires most intensely, not when affection is reliable, but when it's uncertain and intermittent. Each small, unpredictable moment of warmth from someone otherwise distant lands like a genuine reward, precisely because you never know when the next one's coming. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Psychologists also point to something called repetition compulsion, an unconscious pull toward recreating familiar emotional dynamics, even painful ones, in an attempt to finally resolve them. Some part of you may not be chasing him specifically. It may be chasing an old, unfinished question. Can I finally earn consistent love from someone like this? Using him as the latest, entirely unwitting stand-in for someone else who asked that question of you first. Here's the deeper truth this entire video has been building toward. Emotional unavailability doesn't feel like love because it's actually love. It feels like love because your nervous system has confused the sensation of working for affection with the sensation of receiving it. Think of it like this. Imagine your nervous system as a radio that was permanently tuned very early in life, to one specific frequency, a frequency made up of static, occasional clear signal, and the constant low hum of having to adjust the antenna just right to catch a moment of connection. That frequency is uncomfortable, but it's also the only station your radio has ever known how to receive clearly. Now imagine someone hands you a different radio entirely, one tuned to a calm, clear, unwavering signal, no static, no adjusting required. To an untrained radio, that clarity doesn't sound like music. It sounds like nothing, like dead air, simply because it's never had to search for anything in that frequency before. This is why you can sit across from someone, genuinely available, and feel oddly little. Not because he's wrong for you, but because your receiver has never been calibrated to register calm, consistent signal as meaningful. Meanwhile, the partner who makes you work, who occasionally breaks through the static with a flash of real warmth, activates every familiar circuit at once. Your body reads that activation as significance, even though it's actually just recognition. This is also why letting go of an emotionally unavailable partner can feel disproportionately devastating, far beyond what the actual relationship logically warranted. You're not just losing him, you're losing the specific static you'd finally learn to navigate. And silence, even peaceful silence, can feel like a loss when your whole nervous system was built around constant, effortful tuning. This is what's actually happening when you find yourself bored by someone kind and consistent. You're not encountering a lack of chemistry. You're re-encountering a frequency your receiver was never taught to recognize as worth tuning into. And here's the part that should genuinely change how you see this pattern. Radios can be recalibrated. It simply takes deliberate, repeated exposure to the clear signal before your receiver stops, mistaking it for nothing at all. So how do you actually start recalibrating a nervous system tuned toward unavailability? Here's what genuinely helps. First, separate the sensation of intensity from the conclusion of meaning. The next time someone emotionally distant gives you a small flash of warmth and your whole body lights up, pause, and name what's happening honestly. This is my nervous system recognizing a familiar pattern, not necessarily proof that this person is right for me. That distinction alone interrupts the automatic leap from feeling to conclusion. Second, deliberately practice sitting with calm, consistent connection without immediately labeling it boring. When someone reliable texts back quickly, shows up when they say they will, or offers steady, undramatic warmth, consciously notice the sensation and name it as safety. Even if it initially feels flat or unfamiliar, you're teaching your receiver new vocabulary for an old, ignored frequency. Third, get curious about your own early static. You don't need to relive your whole history, but gently asking, when did warmth first feel inconsistent to me? And who taught me that lesson? Often reveals that your current pattern is solving an old equation, not actually describing the person in front of you now. Fourth, watch your own reactions to availability. Like data, not like a verdict. If you notice you've instinctively losing interest, specifically when someone becomes more consistent, treat that as useful information about your wiring, not as objective proof the person has become less compelling. That single reframe can prevent you from unconsciously sabotaging the exact dynamic you say you want. Fifth, build a track record of choosing the clear signal anyway, even when it feels underwhelming at first. Every time you stay engaged with calm, available connection instead of drifting toward static, you're providing your nervous system with new evidence that contradicts decades of old training. Recalibration happens through repetition, not through a single moment of insight, however clear that insight feels right now. Here's the empowering part of all of this. You were never genuinely drawn to unavailability itself. You were drawn to a frequency your body learned to survive on, long before you had any other stations to compare it to. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you someone whose receiver is finally ready to be recalibrated. One clear signal at a time. Love was never supposed to require static. It was supposed to sound like silence finally feeling safe, instead of feeling like absence. If this gave language to something you've felt for a long time, but never quite understood, tell me in the comments. Has calm, consistent love ever felt boring to you before it felt safe? Let's talk about it down there. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, on the psychology behind who we're drawn to and why. Subscribe, because there's a lot more of this we're going to unpack together.